Okay, so we are live. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Michael K from the Center for Functional Health, and today I have the honor of speaking with Tammy Waldron. She is the founder of Towanda Wellbeing. So, Tammy, great having you here. Welcome aboard. I've got lots of questions to ask. I want to dig in deep, so I appreciate spending some time with us this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes.
Okay, as I shared with you, I got my notes here because I got lots of questions. So, today we want to bring that bridge between, what happens in the functional medicine world when we're talking about, gut dysbiosis, we're talking about autoimmune, we're talking about hormone regulation. You and I were already talking about hormones and how that affects us, talking about inflammation and metabolic. But what happens if there's like another layer? So, what's that next layer? And we often talk about that unresolved trauma. So, we'll have people who will take the right supplements, they'll do the right nutrition, they'll exercise, and they've gotten better, but there's still that some things that's still there. And when we dig in deep, that's when we realize how, man, they've been really dealing with something for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, I really want to talk about how trauma affects us. And we always think of trauma affecting us, well, it's just here, but really it's met out physiologically. So, welcome aboard. I have lots of questions, and the first thing I want you to share is like, how did you get here? Right, to start back in 2014, like, how did you get to this point where you're like, okay, this is what I want to do, and how did you create this great, universe that you're in now?
Yeah, honestly, I was on my own searching for everything that you just said. I was doing all the things the world told me to do. Meditation, affirmations, talk therapy, as seeing a chiropractor, taking supplements, eating healthy, exercising, self-help books. But there was still something that was very deep inside of me and was showing up in my life in very destructive relationships and patterns that didn't make sense. And I knew that there was something there to heal. I didn't fully understand what it was, but I kept looking. I kept looking for something that would help me understand what's going on inside of me, these feelings that I have that I just couldn't name. I couldn't really understand, but I knew I could find the answer, and I did.
That's cool. Can you recall, like, what do they say? The straw that breaks the camel's back, that one drip now, it's overflowing water. Can you recall that one moment that you're like, this is it? There's got to be something different.
Yeah, it was my first energy healing class. I learned about an energy healing modality at an event and said, okay, let's try this. And went to a weekend workshop. And in that first day, I was like, oh, now this is getting into something very different that I hadn't touched before. It actually, in that weekend, I was able to better understand what trauma I was carrying. It is adoption trauma. And I didn't really understand that. And I began to start to heal it in that weekend. And that changed everything. I knew that coming from education, I have my master's in curriculum and instruction and have worked in education my whole life, that I was going to actually teach this in my first class. I said, I'm going to learn how to do this for myself, and I'm going to teach this to other people because I know I'm not the only one out here searching for these answers that are hard to find, but they're out there.
But here's the thing, though. I'm a science guy. So now when you say energy healing,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are like, hold on, right? So can you help us understand energy healing
Yeah.
in the sense of science? Like, how do we apply that term? Because a lot of people feel that's very woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, energy healing is not therapy, but therapy is important, and then energy healing is important. How we resonate, how we vibrate, all that. So when we talk about
Mm-hmm.
energy healing, how do you do that? And you have the theta healing, right, and the sound healing. So if you can explain, like, when you say energy healing, where does this come into play?
Yeah. It took me a lot of years to actually be able to study that and understand that, because we also have been kind of separated out from all the science that's been happening around energy healing. And for the science community, they've coined it as biofield energy. And it's also energy psychology. And it's really very new. There's a lot of research that supports how effective these techniques are. And it really is trying to understand how the energy of our system functions. What's the mechanisms of action? How do they work? What happens when we do this? And we are starting to get an understanding of what that mechanism is, but we were using penicillin for years before we understood why and how it worked. Aspirin too. And we're in that same place with energy, but we can measure it. We can measure the energy from our heart. We can measure how we can get coherence between our hearts and our brain when we get into a certain state of being, of mind, of meditation, of mindfulness. And acupuncture has been like thousands of years old, Chinese medicine. And we can measure that today. We can measure the frequencies that are happening at those acupuncture sites. And we can measure the changes of cortisol in our body when we engage in these practices. There's so much science. In fact, they're doing meta research now on these practices, and they're showing that 99% of them and above are statistically significant in meeting their outcomes. And so it's sad that more people aren't aware of it because it's been researched so much. But what it is just helping us to understand and connect to the energy that's going in our body. Our mind, our thoughts, our actions, the way our body is functioning emits a frequency. It is energy. If you think about down to quantum physics, it is, we're all just atoms, and atoms are energy. And so all of that is going on in our body, and it's this response and reaction that happens between us, within us, and with our environment. So it's really fun to get into the science of it. And what I love to do, though, is get into the experience of it, because these are things that don't happen in our mind and our thinking mind. It happens in our bodies and what we can actually feel. So in that training I did, yeah, I learned some things, but I personally experienced it. It was profound.
So we have this push-pull mechanism that you just explained. So it gets out of whack so fast, right? So we're not taught anywhere in school like how we are to work this push-pull mechanism, right? So what do we do with it? Because one can worry themselves to death. I mean, you can worry yourself to almost a lot of physiological dysfunction, right? So if we can worry ourselves to physiological dysfunction, could not the opposite effect occur, right? Could we not, have the better thoughts than the worry, the opposite of worry, non-worry, and create a physiological change as well? Is that where energy healing or energy really comes into play?
I mean, that's just how our body operates, and it's called the placebo effect. And there's a whole bunch of research on that. When you're applying specific energy techniques and protocols, then it's leveraging that system that automatically runs in the body. If you cut yourself, your body automatically knows how to heal. And there's such powerful stories about the power of the mind in healing cancer and disease, and what is coined under the placebo effect. But when you tap into the techniques, it's actually really honing in on that system and being able to engage and push-pull with it. So there's a lot of research on EFT, tapping on the meridian points, and it shows, like controlled studies, it makes a difference that they're touching on the meridian system. And it was so drastic in its reduction of cortisol that they kept repeating the test, like, this can't be right, that the cortisol would drop so quickly. It doesn't drop so quickly. Well, it did when they were engaging with the meridian system. So it's such a fun area to investigate, but I want people to experience it because we are stressed out people. And these techniques, when we start to engage with this energy system in our body, helps us. It is significant for helping anxiety, depression, PTSD, overwhelm, and stress. And like you said, when those things go unaddressed, they lead to physical problems in the body.
And the list of all you just gave, I mean, it's such a direct impact on the nervous system, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's in this giant fight or flight, and I feel so many people are overwhelmed, really just by life itself, and then everything that comes on the internet quite a bit, right? So the overwhelm is great. So you created this amazing place where people can come and heal, right? And we talked about that there is this theta healing, there's this sound healing. So can you explain, like, what is the differences between those?
Yeah, it's actually silent counseling that I do, and I teach that first. That is the meridian-based technique.
Okay.
Stems from EFT. It's using and connecting to your body and identifying where things are blocked, which can impact you in a lot of ways. And so identifying what those are with touch and breath, and you literally feel it in your body. The most common thing I hear people say is, oh, wow, I feel really light. And they feel this sense of peace and calm come over them because we don't realize what we're holding. The body normalizes. Our system is always normalizing until it gets to the point where it can't contain it anymore. It reaches a capacity limit. And that's when you start to have things, letting off steam, which we even say that, blowing off steam, or I'm at the end of my rope. So it could be emotional triggers. It could be nervous breakdowns. It could be burnout, overwhelm, just a generalized anxiety and stress. And then again, it can turn into, like, for me, like, my back will go out. Like, I will have an emotional moment and my back literally will go out of alignment. And then I've had, like, physical things, fibroids in my uterus that I believe come from my adoption trauma. And, things like that can happen too. Yeah.
You talk about adoption trauma. You mentioned that twice. Can you give us a little bit more on that? Like, how do we define that? Yeah. And is that, because I know a lot of times when, we have young children adopted from other countries too, because I think still in the United States, it's still difficult to adopt a baby, and we often have to go elsewhere, other countries. Mm-hmm. How do we define that adoption trauma? What are you looking for? How does one get better with that?
Yeah, so talk therapy never helped me. It didn't help me understand it at all. This is where we're talking about getting to the root cause within our psychological system. And our bodies are, I think, and our psyche is so brilliantly created, it will compartmentalize things that are causing a drain on the system or are overwhelming to help protect us from them. And so obviously I had no memory as an infant being adopted, yet I had it in my neurological system. I've engaged in neurofeedback, which was an awesome thing to do. And in that, getting an EEG, you could see the biomarkers of trauma for me at a young age that was always happening. And I mean, I don't think I really felt what a calm and peaceful nervous system felt like until after I engaged with biofeedback, because my body didn't actually even know how to get out of that stress response, because it's this constant fear of being abandoned, not feeling safe or secure, not on a logical level, because I had a wonderful adoptive family, but on a primal level, primal fears, not feeling loved, wanted, worthy. All of that's going on in my subconscious, in the background of my my system, and it literally showed up in my life as a young adult. People pleasing behaviors, accepting bad relationships. You know, Brene Brown talks about you can only love somebody as much as you love yourself, and those programs of that threshold of how much I love myself is in that subconscious programming, that I didn't feel loved because of that not having that bonding moment with my biological mother. I was placed in a bassinet for 5 days and missed out on that. So we now have attachment theory and attachment disorders to understand that. But these things happen on our psychological level that we can tap into when we use and approach it in the energy system.
Gotcha. So you talked about the biofeedback was really, really helpful for you. But can you share with everybody, like, what does that look like? So you're going to an office somewhere, they're hooking up pads to like the head. I mean, what can you share, like, what is you going through? And then, what happens when there's this breakthrough, like this, like, a wow moment, right? Like what is somebody there to help you through that? And is that what you do? Like, do you do the biofeedback now, right? So
not that. I don't do biofeedback. That was just something I did on my journey to help myself. So yeah, they do hook you up on your head with an EEG machine, and you look at a video. It was like Pac-Man or like pictures moving, and then the system has like markers of ideal brainwave states that it's wanting you to get to and normalize for you. So every time your brain touches that, it gets a reward through the computer. So through movement, through sound, nothing's coming into your head. It's just collecting the data for the system to understand. So it's moving out. And you just watch it and you just don't really do anything. Your brain is just responding. Your brain wants to do the right thing. It wants to get rewarded. But sometimes your system, your neurological system, it runs off of memory and what it's done. So it can literally get stuck. So how I knew I was stuck, because I would startle and scream over literally nothing. Like something would fall and I would be like, ah! Like really startled. It's like on like this state of hypervigilance all the time. And when I did the biofeedback, we took an EEG of my brain in different states, and you could see my brain actually changed. And then later, I went back and did the EEG of my brain during the Theta Healing meditation and out of it, and it was so significant. My activity of my whole brain increased when being in that meditation. So it changes how we see things, changes our perspective, and it literally changes how we're operating in our system in ways we can't really fully understand.
So is Theta Healing the process to help us get like a deeper understanding? Does it also provide us like, okay, the tools, like how do we move forward? Because I mean, some people will turn around and say, you know what, I'm not a proponent of this. You just got to get over it, right? Which is a weird statement anyway, but you hear that a lot. So how does Theta Healing get to the root cause? So when we're in functional medicine, somebody comes in with like this autoimmune or this gut, we're trying to look for the root cause. And full transparency, we don't always know the root cause. And sometimes we know the root cause, we just can't do anything about it. I got to do something with the set of symptoms that are in front of me. So how do we get the root cause when we're dealing with this subconscious kind of stuff that happened?
Yeah. So in silent counseling, it's identifying what the block is in the system, and with the hypothesis that when we clear that block, then the system energy is going to flow. When the energy is flowing, this is Chinese medicine approach. When the energy is flowing, then it knows how to heal itself. And so that's getting to the root cause of these blocks that we don't fully understand. We just know that there's a block in the kidney meridian, for example. And then we process it and clear it through the techniques, and people literally feel better. Theta Healing is different. It's a guided meditation that connects us to what IFS calls our self energy, capital S, our spirit, our soul. So it's much more spiritual in nature. And in that, we can really connect to our intuitions. And then we can understand things better and get a different perspective. And when you're working with a practitioner, then they're able to see things that we can't see for ourselves. So that does get into the woo side of things a bit more, because it definitely is areas that we're not fully can fully research. You know, these systems of energy are holistic. They cannot be taken apart and studied. They have to be studied in its whole. And so that was the first thing I learned was Theta Healing, and it helped me understand my adoptive trauma. I was able to. It's also like hypnosis, Theta Healing. So I was able to connect to my infant self and do inner child work, and be there and heal and just understand what was going on. And in that understanding also brings current day logic. I'm not an infant anymore. None of that is really happening. And so you process all these things that are open, like open windows in your, or open apps on your phone, things that a stress cycle that doesn't get closed, or a trauma that's still open from when you were a child. It's bogging down the system and creating distortions in how you see yourself, how you see you interacting with other people, pushes us in the drama triangle of persecutor, victim, or helper. Sometimes we can circle in all three. For me, my trauma pushed me in victim and helper. I loved to help people because it made me not feel like a victim. But I often found myself in victim roles because I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel loved.
That's deep. So you also mentioned IFS. I know what that is, but a lot of people might not know what that is. So can you explain a little? You know, it's like rolled right out clinically, right? Which is great. Yeah. If you can share a little bit about IFS so people get an understanding what that is.
Yeah. So my practices are in the energy psychology. I'm definitely about helping people with their emotionals. And I just want to say, it's a holistic system, mind, body, spirit. And so if they're having problems with their gut, yes, there could be a emotional component to it, but there could be a physical component to it, just like my physical stress. But IFS is abbreviation for Inner Family Systems. It was created by Dick, he discovered and researched it through grounded research, Inner Family Systems. And he was a family systems therapist fresh out of college. That was about 40 years ago when he started to discover this work. And, you know, honestly, our research around psychology is not that old. I think it's only about 100 years old.
Yeah, it's not long.
It's not very old at all. So 40 years ago, he was fresh out of college and thought, I'm going to be able to fix these patients with their symptoms. He was seeing people with eating disorders and severe like self-harm, suicide. And he really felt like if he looked at the whole system that these people were in, he would be able to fix it, especially if the system would come in and help, you know, family, friends, partners. It's a group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what he found was that it didn't work. Sometimes people got worse. So he got really curious and said, what is going on here? And just started asking a lot of questions. And what he discovered is that we have an internal system that's healthy and natural. What we, before IFS, considered to be multiple personality disorder is actually normal for us to have multiple parts inside of us, and they get dysregulated during trauma and stress. The dysregulation shows up like multiple personality disorder, but naturally healthy, we have multiple parts. It's really fascinating.
You just gave me the segue into the next question, which is, you know, I want to talk about childhood trauma. I want to talk about parts, right? Because we have the different parts. So that's really important. And then physiologically, you know, we have people with like metabolic, where they're insulin resistant. We got gut permeability problems where there's, you know, gut issues. We have autoimmune problems. There's, as you already mentioned, there's cortisol issues. So how does unresolved trauma or childhood trauma physiologically affect those systems? How do you see that?
The way I see it is when we're in a chronic stress, it really cuts off help, and it directs help to where it's like the most important. So our brain, our frontal cortex is the veins, they get smaller so that we can get blood to our muscles so we can run and fight. It's just pulling resources away and putting it to the most important places. And it's targeting what is stuck or what's the underlying issue. And so when you go and heal those underlying issues, it frees up the energy to be able to go and heal the other things. So to me, it's just like chronic dysregulation of the energy system. Instead of it being integrated and healthy and flowing, it gets compartmentalized, just like I described personality disorders. The energy in our system can also get separated out. And when you look at the heart math research, it looks, when people are dysregulated, it looks like they have a heart condition when you look at their heart rhythms. And when they're in an integrated, like flowing, healthy state, it shows a healthy rhythm. And it's like, well, if our hearts looks like it's in disorder and we're not supplying blood to things, which is things that we know when cortisol levels are high, it takes away resources from those organs to survive. It's in a survival state. You can only imagine that those areas are going to be struggling.
So you brought up heart math, right? So heart math is, if you can explain what heart math is, and are you a heart math, isn't like a certification you get like for heart math now?
Yeah, there are certifications. I am not certified. I have a colleague who is, and so I have attended her, informational workshops, and I actually have a little heart math monitor. Okay. So it's a device you can hook up with your phone and you hook it up to your ear, and it actually collects your heart signals, your electromagnetic signals, and you can see what your heart rate looks like when you're stressed and when you're calm. They call it coherence when you're in mind heart coherence, and it's a learned skill of turning in and knowing what it feels like to be in that state. And it's through practice that you can preserve that. And it's also when you're in that state of holistic integration of your systems, you're building that energy system. When it gets dysregulated, it gets depleted. So the more you can be mindful, be present, have this heart and mind coherence, the more you're going to build the capacity for your nervous system to operate from. And when you have a depleted state, then you're more likely to, react to things and go into and not be present when you're in that stressful response, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you can see, because I've seen this, like you can alter your results by, setting up the proper way to shut down before the night, right? So we try to get, our patients at least an hour from no screen time. So we think that's really important, right? We also want to get it to the point where they're actually not working the brain. I don't want them doing puzzles an hour before bed. I think coloring, like the adult coloring books, that kind of stuff is great. I think that's a lot of fun. Reading from a book, I know that sounds old, but reading from a book is absolutely wonderful. And just taking a few minutes to just shut down the brain for a little bit, before they go to sleep. When they can do that, and they do that on a consistent basis, we usually see a good outcome. I really love the idea about the heart math. I did Empower Sleep. I don't know if you're familiar with Empower Sleep.
No.
That's really interesting. So it's a ring that you put it on your index finger, and it's hooked up to your phone, and you can actually see, aside from your O2 and how we're sleeping, but you can see the fragment of sleep that you might be experiencing.
Okay.
And then I did things where I made my eating time a little bit longer after dinner, and the fragmentation wasn't as fragmented. So
you're talking about like an intermittent fasting.
Correct. And I can change it by taking melatonin. I can see the difference between 1.5 milligrams and 3 milligrams melatonin, right? Mm-hmm. You can really see the difference in the fragmentation and getting that deeper recuperative sleep, right? There's sleep and then there's recuperative sleep.
Yeah, right.
So I think the HeartMath thing, is fantastic. I know that, again, I know there's a certification course. I think it's just really fascinating.
It is fascinating. And they're really on top of their research.
Yes, very much so. And it's just, if somebody just Googles HeartMath, they'll see a lot of great information on that.
Yeah, great information. The thing that's important for me and what I do in my program and what HeartMath does too is I am a practitioner and I do help people, but I teach people. I want everyone to know how to utilize these techniques that can tap you into your nervous system so you can regulate it yourself. That's what the monitor is for HeartMath. That's the course that I teach on silent counseling, is understanding all the acupressure points and how they're useful for you and how to utilize them to help you release your trauma, to help you release the stress from the day. And just be regulated. And the more we tap into this system, the more we're going to build it and strengthen it, just like going to the gym and strengthening a muscle.
It's like I tell people, nobody becomes a black belt overnight. Nobody becomes an Olympic lifter overnight, right? So it's something that, it's got to be part of the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? Plain and simple. Yeah. It's just something that we do. We brush our teeth every night. I do my balance work every night, right? So it's just got to be part of the lifestyle, nice and simple. So in the functional medicine world, we'll do blood work and we look at these trends, right? So, conventional medicine, they look to see for something is something pathophysiological, right? Is something way above the reference range, something below the reference range. But, we like to look at that, and we like to look at the trends, right? So we want to see wow, that person's eking towards that metabolic, that insulin resistance more than insulin sensitive. So when we're dealing with these types of settings, what is the trend? What is the subconscious beliefs that you see in your patient, your client? Is this I'm not safe, I'm not worthy? Do you see in our practice, we got the couples where one's the worrier and one's not, right? Very rarely do I ever see they're both worriers or they're both super positive, right? Because it's kind of that push-pull mechanism again, because if they're both the same way, it's just really hard to move forward or you miss something.
Yeah.
Right? So, in your setting, what is it that you see here's the trends?
So with silent counseling, you do a pre and post subjective scoring measure 1 through 10. How are you feeling on this? Just to keep track, because actually what happens with energy psychology, if you don't keep track of records of it, people actually forget, because our system just normalizes. And it's like you forget you even had that issue, or you forget what it was like. And we call it pain amnesia.
Okay.
Yeah. And so creating a timeline and setting goals and factoring that in and helping people to see hey, how's that issue going for you? And it's wow, that issue is actually gone. I forgot about it. It's just, I don't know why, but our psyche kind of works that way, to just compartmentalize and just what's important for us to focus on, right? With all of our senses, our eyes filter out things. Have you ever seen that fun video where they're playing basketball and passing the ball and the gorilla walks through?
Oh yeah.
And you don't even see the gorilla because you're counting how many passes the people in white are passing, and same thing, but with other physical markers. You're collecting the blood work, you're measuring their weight. It's things you can actually tangibly track. But in my world, it's kind of intangible sometimes.
Gotcha. So, for us, somebody comes in, like, we know we have to work on all these levers of sleep and exercise and being mindful, and having a good mindset. We have to work on nutrition. We have to work on movement. We have to work on exercise. So I want to separate those two things, movement and exercise. But sometimes it's so overwhelming with all the symptoms they have, and we just have to start somewhere. So for us, I love to say the power of health is at the end of the fork. Like the first thing I need to change is what we're eating, right? Because this is what we're taking in. This is our energy source. So in your setting, when we talk about like self-healing, it's just sometimes so much. So how do we begin and not have the overwhelm? Like in our program, we're going to meet with something and somebody each week, and we're going to change something each week. We're not going to do a lot of things at one time, because we pull all the levers at once. We just got a little pull, not a lot of pull, right? So in your setting, what are you looking for, and how do we start the change and not overwhelm the person?
Well, people are coming. People are coming because they're fed up. They've been trying things, and actually food is an excellent example, because it's not just about willpower. There's something that can come in and completely self-sabotage that in ways that you don't actually understand. And then you're beating yourself up and you're like, what is wrong with me? What is going on here? Well, there's something going on that's underneath that you can't see. And so people come because they're trying to figure out what's hidden. What haven't they been able to understand? And then they are self-selecting what is the one thing that they really want to work on. And then we just go from there. So if they're, for example, can't quit their addiction or craving for sugar, well, sugar is probably not the best example, because it has so many physical mechanisms that make it addictive. So maybe I can't think of this. If they have like relationship problems that happen over and over again, no matter what happens, this issue continues to come up, and I don't understand why. Well, then we can get to the root of that.
So what can you share, like what it looks like? I walk into the office. What are we doing? What are we looking at? Right. So on my side, we're gonna do a full exam. We're going to do labs. We're going to have a clinical framework that we're going to put together, and this is how we're going to move forward, right? So when I walk into your place, what are we looking at? And then one pushback I want to give, what we often hear is like, do we want to open up this drawer, right? This drawer that's holding a lot of stuff that's protected me for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. And opening this drawer can actually cause some physiological stuff too, right? So we got to think about that. And there are times in my practice, like we'll do some blood work, and it's like, hey, listen, I know you want to take a supplement, I know you want to eat, but you're anemic, and you got to go to hematologist, right? I'm sorry, that's just the end of the story. So I know it's like 3-4 questions at one time. Like in your program, we look at that, you like, wow, we opened up something else here, and now I got to bring somebody else on as a team member.
Well, I think we aren't allowed to feel. We haven't been given permission. We're not allowed. We demonize our feelings, and really our feelings are indicators to help guide us to where we need to go. And when they are integrated and healthy, they are not overwhelming, but they become overwhelming when we push them into the drawer. We don't open the drawer. We don't listen to the drawer, and we just like have the drawer taped up and locked up and packed away, which is normal, which is what we were taught. And so this is an area of relearning and reconnecting with our emotions, that they don't have to be scary or overwhelming. And it takes courage to turn in and begin this work. And so people come. I actually see everyone through Zoom. I do some local workshops, but predominantly it's through Zoom. And so we're actually not talking, we're feeling. Talk therapy doesn't get to where we're going. It's helpful. Talk therapy is helpful for other things, but not this. So we are feeling into our body. We're identifying where things are located in our body that are stuck or ready to be processed. And we're touching on points, acupressure points, and breathing. And we're feeling how it's moving. And then we're talking about what's coming up. So memories could come up. And then we can identify and talk a tiny bit about reframing. You can reframe it now. For example, childhood issues come up a lot. When a child is punished and sent to the other room and told not to come back when they're calm, and oftentimes in parenting, it's just like, I don't want to talk to you because you are upset and having a tantrum. Go get yourself together. And they're children, so they feel rejected. And so that comes up a lot when I first start working with people. So we touch, we breathe, we reconnect to that young part of ourselves. We process that's been open since that time in the body. And then we get this new awareness and a new perspective of what happened in that moment. Well, my parents were parenting. They were doing the best that they can. And so that reframe helps to just kind of like reprogram the system of what happened from this perspective. And then you're integrating that dysregulated part in IFS, you're bringing it back into the system. So we're integrating our system to be healthy and whole. And it just, it's layers and layers of work, and new things come up. So we're often, the triggers, just like IFS, triggers are the trailheads. When something is bothering you, then that's an invitation for you to turn in and identify and find out what's going on and heal it.
Okay. So are there ever situations that come up that you say, okay, now I have to bring somebody else onto this team? Because I always think about, creating like a healthcare team for my patients, right? I mean, I think that's really important. You're about your actors and actresses and all your sports people that have these amazing healthcare teams. Like, well, why can't you and I have an amazing healthcare team, just locally, right? So are there ever situations where, hey, something came up and now we got to bring somebody else in?
Yeah, like physical things, right? For example, I've referred multiple people to the biofeedback, the neurofeedback. Neurofeedback. I'm sorry if I said that wrong earlier, because I can see that their nervous system is just really like stuck, actual like physical pathways in their brain. Referring people to exercise, referring people to go and talk to their primary care about certain things, and a holistic functional medicine to get on the right supplements, because we all have our scope, right? Like my scope is helping people with their emotions, and outside of that, I am introducing them to people and asking them to bring it in, because in the world that we are in right now, we are empowered to be the center of our own sphere of care. We manage who is caring for us, and it takes a village. It takes a village, and I understand and know what types of things are even possible by my own network of who I'm going to. I've experienced amazing therapies by working with people and referring people and connecting to those networks.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great. I want to bring up another question and thought. So I have this wonderful, amazing patient. We always talk about parts work, and we'll talk about IFS, and we'll talk about trauma. She's writing this most amazing book. I can't wait until it's finally published. And we often talk about, I will bring up, this creating this resiliency, right? So where do we come across where sometimes we have to we just have to be resilient and get stronger, right? Because you'll see, how do I frame this? So how there's the term oh, let's have a timeout and think what you're thinking about when you're speaking with a child and all that kind of stuff. Where is it that we have to, is there a room where we have to just also toughen up sometime? How do we become resilient? Do we go through this program and become resilient and stronger on the other side, so we're not so rocked when something happens negative?
100%. Yeah. Because when you're dysregulated and you're at the edge of your capacity of overwhelm, then you're at the end of your rope. There's really no space. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, says that's where our power lives. Our power lives in the space between a stimulus and a response. But often people are not responding, they're reacting. And so when we go in and integrate our system, when we close those windows of open traumas that have been hanging open and dysregulating that system, when we start to do that and become more harmonized, wow, yeah. And when you're allowed to feel your feelings and be present in the moment, and you have the ability to be curious, there's space, you can think about things, you can really have autonomy, and what do I want to do in this moment? And so those are things that we talk about, especially when those are the issues that are coming up, people who are having trouble with their having their voice in relationships. And so sometimes there's homework, like we are healing these things, but then you have to live them in the real life to like really anchor them into your system and into your habits. And so you can't just always come and talk about having standing up for yourself, but then never do it actually in real life. Like, right. Yes, we have to be on the edges of life and living, because that's where we are, experience joy and vitality and love, and also be supported when things when we need support in different ways. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. And again, yes, it did. And I always think about like, how does one become more emotionally resilient? We talk about immune resiliency, right? Mm-hmm. How do we become emotionally resilient, right? Mm-hmm. That's my question, right? And sometimes I think sometimes we are trying to make things nice and easy, where sometimes you gotta say, hey man, you just gotta work harder at this, right? You gotta work through this. So I'm always looking at like, how do we build our immune system resilient? How do we make our emotional system resilient?
Right.
How somebody experiences a trauma and they walk through it, and it appears to be like there's no issue. We never know for sure, right? There's something, right? It appears to be, right? So, and then somebody has something, and boy, it just breaks down.
Yeah. Because when we're so dysregulated, we're so fragile, and everything is so overwhelming. When to the outside perspective of somebody else, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Your response doesn't add up to the way I would respond, but we don't know what's going on inside of people. Someone could walk through something and be completely stoic and really just be locked up inside, or they could actually have a really integrated system where it doesn't really impact them. And that's actually what I've discovered through my work, is that ability. And now, hindsight, I'm like, okay, wow, I've healed a lot of things and I'm in such a better place. But what does that mean? It is this. It's emotional capacity and resilience capacity. The problem that I have right now is that we're talking about resilience only in the context of positive psychology, and it's not our mind only doing this work. Our body actually wins the fight. If you're going to arm wrestle with your mind or your body always wins. So when we're not closing these open loops in our body, then they're going to override. So what happens is we're reframing, and it just takes energy and it gets exhausting, and then we lose willpower, because the root problem is whatever is in the body is running that emotional wave. But when we can get to the root of that emotional wave, we can understand it, we can heal it, then the wave no longer exists. And then we start to grow in this capacity. So emotional capacity is emotional literacy. We need to be able to name them. We need to know what they feel like in our body, because I believe that it's different. Everyone sees color differently, but we all call it the same thing. Mm-hmm. I believe we all experience emotions differently based on our past experiences, and getting to understand them better. And then just being able to be present in them and live life through them makes us super duper resilient. I had a huge event happen this summer, and I don't put myself in situations, as I self-select where I'm going to go. I don't put myself in a situation that would put me in a really, really stressful peaceful place. But this summer, my dog got shot by a neighbor because she went on. Now, while my friend was out walking with her, and she did not die. She's a magical creature because no internal damage. The bullet's still in her stomach. It bypassed every organ. He shot at her 7 times, and I had emotional capacity. I was calm. I was never angry at him. I actually felt compassion and really was in huge gratitude that my dog was okay, that nobody else got shot because there was people on the road with my dog, my dear sweet friends. And so, yeah, doing this work, leaning into your emotions, understanding them, processing them changes you in ways we can't measure yet. But it sure does show up in your real life. It's incredible. And it just is hard for people to understand because it's out of their realm of experiences. So you just have to try. You have to trust. You have to try. You got to be courageous and just lean in. And emotions is one of the big things I'm really going to start talking about. I'm writing a children's book series on emotions and understanding them because I see them in a very different way. They are tools for us. They're not so black and white, cut and dry. You know, some are primary emotions, some are tools. Like you said, sometimes we have to tap into tools. If someone's scared about something, then they tap into courage and bravery to move through that fear because staying in fear isn't helpful.
Right.
Or if they are having trouble with willpower, where does your persistence live? What is something that we can get you to have a goal towards of something that you are longing for on the other side that will give you the endurance to get through, right? All of those are feelings to feel into and levers to help us move through the world. And then on the other side of those, we get to just celebrate and have pride and joy. And when they can walk that bridge, when you get people to walk that bridge, then you can start to tap back into that. Okay, you did it before. Remember what that felt like. Now we're going to go to this. Let's do that again. And they're such helpful tools for us.
That's fantastic. And we will end on that high note, but I have just 2 more questions. Okay. And that is, 1, can you share with everybody how somebody can work with you?
Yes.
So that's number 1. Number 2, what book are you reading right now?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So how people can connect to me, I'm at towandawellbeing.com. And you can also find me, Tammy Waldron, on LinkedIn. Right now, I'm actually really in the weeds of science of energy healing. I feel that it is my duty and to do my due diligence and understand it better so I can share with other people better. And I'm working on my children's book, which is, talking about feelings.
That's excellent. All right. So we're in the elevator. We're going from the 10th floor. We're going down to the 1st floor. You're going to tell me one magical thing. What are you going to share with me by the time I step out of that elevator?
Oh, gosh, it kind of depends on who you are. I mean, I always tell people they're their most important person in their life. How's that showing up for you in your words, your thoughts, your actions? Self-love is the heart of everything.
I like that. All right. That's excellent.
Yeah. What about you? I want to know your answer. If we were in the elevator, and what would you tell me?
On the way down?
Yeah.
There's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Always.
Mm-hmm. That shifts things, doesn't it?
Always. Right? And even when people are so upset because of the traffic or something they saw on the internet, I'm like, can you give me something to be grateful for? And they're like, well, not today. There's nothing to happen. I'm like, so which one of your senses do you want me to take away? Mm-hmm. What? Which one of your senses do you want me to take? Your eyes? Do you want vision to go? Do you want hearing to go? Do you want taste to go? Do you want touch to go? What do you want to go away? Well, I don't want anything to go away. Therefore, we have a lot to be grateful for.
So much to be grateful for.
Right?
Yep. So much. And sometimes some things we can learn from. Sometimes.
For sure. for sure. So hang out for a few seconds, everybody. This is Dr. McKay with the Center for Functional Health. Today, we spoke to Tammy Waldron. Everybody, hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful weekend. And remember, always be grateful for something. See you guys soon.